Thank you, Dr. Nichols. We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule with questions for the witnesses, and I will recognize the Vice Chairman, Mr. Gohmert from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank all the witnesses for being here. It is an important subject. Mr. Eckhart, I know it's obviously very difficult for you. What a handsome young man you and your wife had. Obviously brought a lot of joy. You mentioned that he bought it legally. Did you ever find out how he heard about this and where he purchased it?
Connor was with a new friend that day. He had actually been offered, I think it's on.
Yeah, I think it is.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
He had actually been offered marijuana. He declined. He didn't want that. He didn't want to be around it. And as an alternative, the synthetic drugs were suggested, and they were purchased at a local smoke shop, along with, other tobacco products. And I think truly was viewed as a safe alternative.
Because it was legal.
Legal.
Yeah, so it must be okay.
Yeah, and I think, there's youth find themselves often in situations of peer pressure, and he was declining one thing, and it was a way to concede.
Well, he was acting admirably, relying on his government that if it was too harmful, it would be illegal, obviously. And obviously, as you and your wife have been doing, you've been raising awareness. If he had been aware of the dangers, obviously he was sharp enough and moral enough that he would have turned it down. He just didn't know the risk. Exactly. Mr. Milione, how big is the market for illicit prescription drugs compared to heroin?
The market for prescription illicit or prescription opioids is massive. It would be hard to put a number on it. If you put it in overdose numbers, we're talking 18,000, 19,000 overdoses in 1 year of prescription opioids. And with heroin, you have almost 9,000. So it's a trend. Heroin is trending up, but you have a massive prescription opioid problem.
So is the opioid trending down or just heroin trending up?
We don't see a downward trend in prescription opioid abuse or overdoses. That's trending up, not at quite the rate that the heroin is trending up. They're both trending up. Heroin is intersecting, unfortunately, on that graph.
Isn't it interesting as our federal government is forcing people to turn away from God, they're searching for answers in other places that are not so good for them. Do you know what the profit margin for a kilogram of a synthetic cannabinoid is?
It's a massive profit margin. So for maybe $1,500, $1,000, up to $2,000, you could buy a kilogram of a synthetic substance, a synthetic cannabinoid, and maybe about 13 kilograms of, let's say, marshmallow leaf. And you could turn that into about $250,000, that initial $1,000 to $1,500 into $250,000 of profit.
Dr. Nichols, you wrote an article in January of 2011 where you expressed remorse because someone had used your published research to produce a substance that caused 6 deaths. How could they have used your article to produce that? I mean, did you go into that kind of detail? Or it's hard to believe they could have taken your article and used that.
The situation is the chemists who are involved in making these substances are quite accomplished. I think many of them must have PhDs. So we published in the open scientific literature, and I had been doing studies of ecstasy, its mechanism of action.
Right.
So one of the compounds we had made was called MTA. And in the assay that we used was a rat assay. It really identified compounds which cause the release of a brain transmitter called serotonin. And that doesn't represent the effects of ecstasy, but somebody apparently in the Netherlands saw that paper we published, and actually we had published that it was a potential antidepressant. when we actually looked at it. They saw we had made it. The synthetic methods are in all the published literature, so they simply made a batch of it and ironically put it into tablets called flatliners. This was really the first case where I was really shocked, because all medicinal chemists who work in this field publish their work in the open literature. And if you work with cocaine analogs or hallucinogens or MDMA analogs, it's all out there. The methods are on the papers. It just takes someone who can mine that literature to find the kind of compound they want to work with.
But you weren't publishing the recipe or anything,
It's in the scientific
but
publication.
not in your article. That's what.
No, not in the essay.
Yeah.
No.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I think you blame yourself too much for that, but I appreciate the time. Thank you. You're back.
Chair recognizes the ranking member from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.